What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking the best picks in every round of your 2024 fantasy football draft. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue tracking with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. As you can see, we have got the current Fantasy Pros 2024 fantasy football draft rankings pulled up as of late July based on PPR scoring. We're going to use this to kind of go through the rankings of players. But like I mentioned in the intro, we're going to talk about the best picks in every round. So what does that mean? We're going to take you through the first 10 rounds of your drafts, whether it's a 10-team league or a 12-team league. We're taking some liberties. Also, I've tried to compare this to other platforms, and I'm going to call out certain players that are ranked a little bit too high or too low so that you can keep that in mind, because obviously the Fantasy Pros rankings aren't the end-all, be-all of this, and some players are ranked too high or too low. But basically, these are the players round by round that we like the most, that we have the most stock in, that we think have the highest upside and the best bang for their buck. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting with the first round, I'm going to highlight actually two names here because I think they're just linked so close together this year. That's Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall. I'm going to say, Bijan / Breece Hall for the first round, the best pick for 2024. The reason that I say that is I still believe that the running back position is king for fantasy football. I think a lot of people kind of got a reminder of that last year with what Christian McCaffrey was able to do and where you were able to draft him. And now he's the consensus #1 pick yet again. But basically, I think Bijan and Breece Hall are just a notch below Christian McCaffrey. They're both on very solid offenses with upgrades at the quarterback position for the Falcons, obviously adding Kirk Cousins for the Jets, getting Aaron Rodgers back fully healthy. And if you look at Breece Hall, he was able to put together a top 5 season last year, even without Aaron Rodgers. I think the rushing yardage, the rushing touchdowns go up for him with Rodgers back. Same situation with Bijan Robinson, with Kirk Cousins now in town instead of Ritter, and with Arthur Smith gone. Both these guys are going to be involved as pass catchers. And the fact that you can get them typically outside of the first 5 picks, I think is an absolute steal. Honestly, in my eyes, if you said that the first 3 picks are McCaffrey, Breece, and Bijan in that order, or Bijan and then Breece, I would have zero issues with it. I just think that the wide receiver position is so much deeper than running backs in general. You're going to see Breece and Bijan as first-round selections. I would say probably in the middle of the first round. They're not going to drop to the second round, no way, unless something really, really strange happens. So for that reason, I still think, again, running back position is so key. I don't think the drop-off between them and Christian McCaffrey is all that much, yet we're all drafting McCaffrey as the consensus #1 guy. So I think we should give some love to Bijan and Breece Hall. But let's move on to the second round. And, I'm going to bring up Garrett Wilson here. And before everyone gets up in arms, since he comes in at the number 10 spot, if it's a 12-team league, that's obviously within the first round. I've done a lot of mock drafts, guys, and Garrett Wilson, depending on the size of your league, can be an early second-round selection more often than not. Again, it's going to really depend on what platform you're drafting on. That is going to be the biggest thing. So I get it. It says player overall ranking 10, but trust me, Garrett Wilson can be an early second-round selection, like the first or second pick in the second round. That's why I want to highlight him. I'm a big Garrett Wilson believer. I was a big Garrett Wilson believer last year. Unfortunately, through no fault of his own, I continue to say it, Aaron Rodgers goes down in the first series of that game, and then pretty much the entire Jets season was ruined just like that. But more so than anyone else, Garrett Wilson, all those dreams of that breakout season, they vanished. I've said Garrett Wilson is going to finally have that breakout year in 2024, just a year delayed. And if you look at the way he's being ranked and valued, people seem to agree with that because he's still a top 10 wide receiver. And I think Aaron Rodgers has another year or two of good football left in him. You could argue this is the most talented roster he's had in a very long time in his career. They've upgraded that offensive line. Like, it's going to be Rodgers to Garrett Wilson. That's going to be the connection. They are by far and away the top wide receiver. And I think we're going to see some great things from Wilson. So whether it's PPR, whether it's standard, he can do it all. He can stretch the field. He can do it in the short, intermediate routes as well. High touchdown upside. I love Garrett Wilson. Rodgers has typically been able to support, if you give him a good enough wide receiver, a pretty fantasy relevant stat line from that guy. I think Garrett Wilson is going to be the next name in that long line. So for that reason, I do like Garrett Wilson. Again, maybe taking some small liberties here if you're looking at these rankings, but there are times where you're going to see him as an early second-round selection, and if you have the chance to draft him there, absolutely jump on it. Next, we go to Drake London here, ranked 18th overall. But again, I'm telling you, in places like ESPN or Yahoo, he's comfortably going in the third round, especially if it's a 10-team league. So that's why I just want to bring that up. Here, 18th, that would translate to, mid-late second-round selection. More often than not, he's a third-rounder. But now that we have that out of the way, look, Drake London, let me start by saying this. After A.J. Brown and Puka Nacua go, like, there's a big drop-off in wide receiver tiers, in wide receiver expectations, talent. And I recognize that with Drake London. But he's in that next tier of guys with guys like Devontae Adams, Olave, Marvin Harrison, Michael Pittman, Ayuk. And I look at all those guys, and I think they all have question marks. I don't want to put that much stock in a rookie wide receiver in Marvin Harrison. Devontae Adams, old, with the Raiders. What's the quarterback situation there? What will the usage be like? All big question marks. Olave I do like, but I think Drake London has that ability, unlike Chris Olave maybe, to be that game breaker guy, not somebody that's going to be supported more so by the PPR aspect of the scoring format. But I think Drake London is a game changer, game breaker. And the biggest reason why I'm in on him is the quarterback upgrade. We've seen what Kirk Cousins can do for his number one wide receiver. Hell, for his, if you have a talented tight end, we saw it with Hawk. If you have a talented number two with Addison. So I am really, really expecting big things from Drake London this year. I think he's going to be the top target for Kirk Cousins. Big body guy, can be used in the red zone. So I like London. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Justin Jefferson or anything like that, but even if you don't like Kirk Cousins as a real-life quarterback, for fantasy purposes, he can get the job done and he can support a fantasy-relevant wide receiver. If for some reason he starts out the year on a PUP list or something like that, you've got the quarterback emergency there with Penix, still an upgrade over Ritter. So I really, really do like Drake London this year. Next, let us move on to the fourth round selection. And here I'm going to go all the way down to number 33 in Cooper Kupp of the LA Rams. So again, typically I see Cooper Kupp as a middle fourth round selection, end of the fourth round selection. And why is that? Well, obviously last year he starts out the year hurt. Then Puka Nacua does Puka Nacua things and breaks the record for rookie receiving yards, right, in their first year. It was incredible. And he was like the number one wide receiver for the Rams. And we kind of forgot about Cooper Kupp. Even when both were on the field, Puka Nacua outshined Cooper Kupp in certain situations. But look, I still believe that Kupp now is still going to be an integral part of this offense. And you've heard Matthew Stafford talk that both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are going to be fed the football. Kupp is also a little bit healthier now. And yes, the age is a factor, but I do think he probably has one or two more really fantasy relevant years left in him. And as long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, I really like Cooper Kupp. So I think he's going to be a little bit more consistent than he was last year. And by far and away, what really gets me excited about Kupp is that he's the better value out of the two guys, because, I look at where Puka Nacua is going, end of the first round, early second round, as opposed to Cooper Kupp, end of the fourth round. I think that is pretty significantly, cheaper. And I wouldn't be shocked if at the end of the year, Cooper Kupp is only a couple hundred yards away from Nakua, or honestly, right there or ahead of him. So for that reason, I really, really like Cooper Kupp. Basically, you can get an upside of a top 12 wide receiver, but in the 4th round. Now let's continue to move on to 5th round. We are going to again scroll down here, and we're going all the way down to the 51st overall player, Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals. I am going to include a tight end here. That is McBride. And look, McBride during certain points of last year, towards the end of the year, he was the best tight end for fantasy football purposes, or right there at the top, him and Laporta. The offense was going through Trey McBride, and I get it. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been added to this offense, and he is going to be the number 1 guy now. But McBride is going to be a very strong number 2, and when coverage looks and locks on to Harrison, McBride is going to be that option. I think that maybe right now, part of the reason why you're getting a somewhat of a discount on McBride is because people are worried about Marvin Harrison. I really like McBride. I look at the tight end names this year that have a chance to finish as the number 1 overall tight end, that aren't named Travis Kelce. McBride's there, Laporta's there, maybe Kincaid, Andrews, and I think McBride, out of all those guys, you look at where he's going, one of the safer choices. So I really, really like McBride. I think that, worst case, right around the tight end number 5, he's going to continue to be used. So I really, really like Trey McBride this season as well in the 5th round, getting you an advantage at that tight end position. Next, let's look at the 6th round. George Pickens here comes in at 54th overall. So again, depending on the size of your leagues, if it's a 10-team league, right around the start of the 6th round, 12-team league, a little bit different, but I've been able to get George Pickens as a 6th rounder before in 12-team leagues recently, so I do want to highlight him here. I'm really high on George Pickens. I think without Diontae Johnson and with the huge quarterback upgrade, getting rid of Pickett and adding Wilson/Justin Fields, George Pickens is going to eat. He is going to break out. And to me, George Pickens is by far and away the top target for the Steelers. He's done it before, even with Diontae Johnson outpacing him, outperforming him. He's had huge games in the past. And, regardless of who the quarterback is, let's say if it's Fields, he recently supported a top 10 season from DJ Moore, right? Russell Wilson, bit of a more accurate passer. He's going to get the football to George Pickens. So I'm not worried about Pickens at all. I think getting him, potentially in the 6th round as a guy that has wide receiver 1 upside, really, really excited about that. So I am pulling the trigger on George Pickens. And, in situations where this offense has to play from behind, it's going to be airing out the football. So Pickens is going to be in a really, really good opportunity more often than not. But now let's get to the 7th round. And funny enough, I want to highlight Diontae Johnson of the Carolina Panthers here, former Pittsburgh Steeler, former teammate of George Pickens. But to me, that trade that the Panthers made for Diontae Johnson is really going to help Bryce Young. Yes, Adam Thielen was the guy there last year, but Diontae Johnson is going to be the new number 1. He's younger. I think he has a little bit more ability in terms of the routes that he can run, and I think he's going to be that PPR guy for Bryce Young. He's going to be the number 1 wide receiver there. I'll allow Adam Thielen to be the number 2, and that's going to really open things up for this offense. The offense itself also did a really good job in free agency upgrading the interior of that offensive line, which was a big issue for them last year. So that's going to give more opportunities for Bryce Young to find his wide receivers. So that's a plus there. I also think that Diontae Johnson is getting a quarterback upgrade, if we have to be honest. Kenny Pickett as opposed to Bryce Young now, which is going to be a better situation for him. Let's not forget, Bryce Young supported a pretty good season for Adam Thielen last year, as big of a disaster as 2023 was for the Panthers. And again, this team is going to be playing from behind. They're still going to be a team that struggles this year. So Diontae Johnson is going to be force-fed the football. There's going to be a lot of volume, so I am excited about that as well. Now going to the 8th round, we are going to scroll down here. 84th overall, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. And I get it. Look, people are probably sick of me talking about Kyle Pitts. I highlighted him before when I was talking about guys that I think are going to see their values go up once we get close to August, September. But there's no reason why Drake London and Bijan Robinson's values are so high, but Kyle Pitts isn't. Kyle Pitts is going to be the number 2 pass catcher on this offense. I'm not worried about Darnell Mooney. And again, it's a tight end position where comes in at the tight end number 7. He has top 5 tight end upside. The fact you can get him in the 8th round is really, really good for all those reasons that I mentioned that I'm excited about. Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts has that same situation. I think the biggest reason why people are out on Pitts, and I get it, this is a part of fantasy football, but it's also a big mistake of fantasy football, is recency bias. You were burned by him last year and the year before. You might have even, released him last year at a certain point, dropped him from your roster, so you don't want anything to do with Kyle Pitts. That's not how you do fantasy football. You look at the situation, you look at the upgrades from year to year, and you pinpoint who has a really good chance of improving. And if the draft price makes sense, you pounce on that guy. And Kyle Pitts is absolutely in that camp. Getting somebody that's a tight end 7 that has top 5 upside, I would do that all day long. Let's go to the 9th round now with the guy that I think has a really interesting ranking here, and that is Zack Moss of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Zack Moss, I've kind of seen him all over the place. So take this one maybe with a bit of a grain of salt. He's one of those pretty, I would say players that is, depending on who you ask, pretty contentious in terms of the rankings. So here, Fantasy Pros has him 101th overall. I do think he has the nod ahead of Chase Brown, better pass blocker, coming off a really good season. The Bengals specifically went with him, didn't add anyone else for this offense. We saw what Joe Mixon just did here. I think Moss proved last year that he can be the guy. I think he's going to be given the opportunities from the Bengals. This should be a good offense, and I think getting Zack Moss right around the 9th round, depending on the size of your leagues and the running back runs that you might see, and potentially as the starting running back here for the Bengals, that is tremendous, tremendous value. So if you've ignored the running back position, I love taking a chance on Zack Moss later on. But let's kind of conclude here with the last name that I want to highlight. In the 10th round, Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. So to me, look, Aaron Rodgers, he might actually be going after the 10th round, depending on how certain individuals draft and how highly, again, somebody has Aaron Rodgers ranked in their internal system and platform on the quarterback rankings. But to me, Aaron Rodgers obviously right now is ranked low because he didn't do anything last year. He's old, coming off an Achilles, but he basically had like a year and a half to rehab. And I said it before, he's playing arguably with the best offense he's had in a really long time. The offensive line was upgraded. And with Aaron Rodgers, I also think he's going to be helped out by a pretty good defense as well. He potentially was being talked about being able to play last year at certain points in time, but the Jets didn't make a playoff push, so never came to fruition. I really like Aaron Rodgers in terms of, the other veteran quarterbacks that are right around him. Like I look at Kirk Cousins, I looked at Matthew Stafford, I look at Justin Herbert. I think Aaron Rodgers, out of all those guys, you can argue has, one of the better offenses surrounding him. You've got up-and-coming superstars at like every level, running back, wide receiver with Breece, with Garrett Wilson. You've got a really strong defense. So I'm in on Aaron Rodgers. I think he has 1 or 2 more years left in him for fantasy football purposes. I think he is criminally underranked right now, coming in at the quarterback 20. But with that, we wrap up our breakdown of the best picks in every round of your 2024 fantasy football drafts. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.